Okay. It's for 5:43 p.m. on Monday, February 13th, 2023, and I'd like to call this work session to order. First on our agenda are city updates, and Ms. Solano, please take it away.
City Council, Mayor Gradisar. First on the agenda, Director of Public Affairs was just posting to the Facebook that there is a connectivity issue that not been able to view work session, so that posting. I have a few city updates, and then I'll turn it over to the mayor to conclude the city updates this evening. The COVID cumulative count for the past week is 54.9, with a positivity rate of 6.9, which is up from 4.4 last Monday. But we do have an increase in declining stable patient days at Parkview Hospital, up to 12 from 9 last week. And then I also have an update. The National Weather Service is predicting some very low temperatures. Earlier today, the mayor declared a temporary housing and shelter emergency for the city that commences tomorrow, February the 14th at 5 p.m. and it ends at 7 a.m. on Saturday, February 18th. That'll allow the emergency warming shelter to open for the next several nights. I do have an ARPA update, which is there's two on first reading this evening, the Pueblo Zoo and the Sangre de Cristo Art Center, and on second reading, the public hearing, the United Way request for the lead center. I have an update on the $1 million trash cleanup as well. They have begun doing some work. Late January, early February, they've been out 10 different days, weather, of course, permitting. Our new coordinator has hired 8 part-time helpers that are out in the community. They've picked up trash in the area along 50 Bypass, east side of Fountain Creek, between 4th and 8th Street, and a vacant row south of Pride Park, which is on the west side, I think south of, maybe north of 13th Street. The following is the count of what they've collected to date, and the data will be collected every time they go out. 4 tons of trash, 174 needles, 52 tires, and 14 shopping carts, and they have found a way to actually return the shopping carts if they're identifiable to the grocery store. So that was good news. This week, as the weather permits, they have a plan to go along the Hudson Avenue, and they'll focus on the west side of Fountain Creek beginning next week, that is south of 4th Street to the Arkansas confluence. The equipment we have received so far is the trailer, and the pickups and the trash truck are still on order. As of Friday afternoon, the RFP went out for the proposal for the day labor payroll provider, and it will close on March 2nd on that Wednesday afternoon. So that's the update on the status of the trash $1 million program. And now I'll turn the microphone over to the mayor to complete city updates this evening. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, members of the council, I just wanted to give you an update on a discussion we had at your last meeting. Council discussed hiring a lobbyist to work with us in Denver. And coincidentally, at the last Chamber Legislative Breakfast, Gil Romero was there. He's a lobbyist. He's lobbies for Pueblo County, lobbies for other organizations in the city of Pueblo. And I inquired of him whether this would be something he would take on. And I had a conversation in a Zoom meeting with him on Friday. He said he would take it on. He sent me a proposed contract. Obviously, they're nearing the halfway point of the legislative session at this point. So if the council desires to hire a lobbyist for this year, we have to move quickly. This is, I think, would be a professional services contract under the charter. We wouldn't have to go out for an RFP if you didn't want to. His fee for the rest of the year for March, April, and May would be $12,000, $4,000 a month to provide services to the city of Pueblo if it's the desire of council to bring him on. If you don't want to bring him on and you want to go through the RFP process, we can start that process now, but it won't be completed until the next legislative session, obviously. So we just would like some direction from the council about how you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Solano and the mayor, for those updates. Does council have any questions or direction for the lobbyist? Councilor Maestri.
Yes, I think that called Action 22. We belong to Action 22 as an organization. They're a nonpartisan organization. They're very up on the legislation that's going through, they could come and give us a nonpartisan viewpoint and just let us know what's happening, because they are local, so that they can come to a meeting and present to us. I'd like to have them, I spoke with Counselor Martinez and asked if they could come to the retreat. And so we can start there and maybe utilize them for right now and put out an RFP. And then that way we can have a selection of people who want to apply instead of just one person.
I might also point out that the Chamber has a legislative committee that meets every Friday. If you want invites to that, and they discuss legislation that's of interest to the business community. So it's been pretty informative, and that's another way to stay informed about what's going on.
Well, Action 22 is well-rounded. They cover everything. And so it would be nice to have them come in and let us know what's happening, if we have something, because right now, one of the things is, local control is in jeopardy with the legislation that's coming forward. That would take a lot of control away from what we do here on council locally. And if we need representation, we can reach out for representation at that time to lobby for us.
Councilor Flores.
I thought Action 22 was a lobbyist group for all 22 counties. So I don't believe that their interest is on any one county. It's a macro look at 22 different counties.
Correct, but they are local to us, so that it's convenient for them to present to us, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love to hear a presentation from
Yeah.
them, but they're not a lobbyist.
No, they're not. They're coming and they're letting us know about the legislation that's
Okay.
coming.
Other thoughts from Councilor Atencio?
Yeah, I like the idea of having a lobbyist on the ground at the Capitol, specifically lobbying for us, not the rest of the counties or anybody else, but if there's legislation that affects us specifically, then we have somebody that's knocking on doors, talking to legislators. Action 22 won't do that, the chamber doesn't do that, somewhat, but, and even Action 22, but not like if we had a lobbyist on the ground knocking on doors for us. But we could literally call him up and say, these are our concerns, take them to the legislators, and he'll knock on every door if he has to.
That's correct, Larry. I'm not saying we don't need a lobbyist. What I'm saying is we pay a fee to Action 22, and they could come monthly, they can come every session, and they can give us updates of what's going on, and then we proceed and give orders from there. Whereas a lobbyist for $4,000 a month, when we're already paying, when we can cut some of those costs by getting the information and directing our lobbyist.
Well, I'll be at the policy committee meeting of CML on Friday, and we'll discuss all of the legislation that has to do with municipalities at that. But even with my voice talking at that meeting, it still doesn't, it's not lobbying, it's just, we would depend on, it depends on, there's 26, I believe, policy members. If the majority of those people don't like the legislation, and we do, we're not going to be represented. Does that make sense?
Correct.
Because the majority is what
Yeah, so we are
rules.
looking for a legislator,
So,
a lobbyist.
I just think it's a real benefit to have somebody on the ground,
Listen.
even now.
It'd be nice to put an RFP out for a lobbyist, not just, I'd like to see an array of people apply, and we choose from there. Not someone.
What's the timeline on the RFP?
RFP, we probably have to be out there for 30 days, at least 2 weeks from the time it got written. Probably been a while since they wrote an RFP for a lobbyist, so it might take a while to get done, but, there's no way we could have somebody on before the end of the legislative session. So if we want to go that route, we'll put that out there, but the plan should be that we'll start them January 1, or as soon as we can get them through. I mean, they might start later in the year to get ready for the legislative session. But as a practical matter, we wouldn't be able to bring anybody on to do any good at all this year.
Would he be able to contract if we have issues that we want to be represented for in the meantime? Couldn't we just contract him for those particular issues to go up there?
I'm sorry,
I said, if we, after being briefed about the legislation, and there are things that we want to address, in the meantime, would he contract to handle just those particular things that we're wanting to address? Until we have time, take time to choose a lobbyist. He may be the person we choose in the end, but I think that we should be able to have a variety of people apply, and that we should be able to interview them and see where we would like to, how we would like to proceed.
I think what Counselor Maestri is saying is using Mr. Romero for this legislative session while we're putting out an RFP later on to start January 2024.
sure, we could do that. I don't think he'll do it like on an hourly basis. I mean, this is what
Sure.
he proposed, $4,000 a month if we want to bring him on between the 1st of March and the end of the legislative session on the 30th of May. And then, yeah, we can do an RFP.
Counselor Tencio, then Counselor Flores.
Yeah, the only problem I see with an RFP is that we don't have any, Gil is the Pueblo boy. He is from here, he knows us, he's worked with us before. If we put out an RFP, the only other lobbyists I know of are in Denver. So we hire a Denver person to do business for us.
We don't know that.
I don't know that I'd like that at all.
Well, I guess
That's
until
something, yeah, we could determine as we move forward.
Counselor Flores?
Yeah, Gil has over 30 years' experience being a lobbyist, so he's not a novice. Secondly, there's a big difference between the chambers that do a good job of having the breakfasts here, and all of us should be attending those. And they'll probably have 3 or 4 other breakfasts here in Pueblo to talk about specific bills with our representatives at those breakfasts. So that's one piece of the puzzle, but I like the idea of maybe hiring him on a short-term basis for the next 3 months. And somebody brought this, was it you? I think President Graham brought this up, and the reason I think this is important is there's a big issue now that Avarice Steel is very concerned about. And it has to do with some sort of environmental issue. And, we're going to need somebody that's on the floor to help us on that so we can understand what it is Avarice is concerned about. And having Gil there, guiding us, I think is really valuable.
Yeah, I spoke to the commissioners, one of the commissioners this morning, and they told me that Gil was a very effective lobbyist for them, so $4,000 is kind of steep compared to what we were paying before, but I understand on short notice that that's what we have to do if we want somebody in here, and I would like to see somebody in here for this session.
Well, in all fairness, we weren't using the lobbyists much. I mean, we sort of, since I became mayor, been cutting their salary down. And this started the same way. It was Ray Kagosic that was lobbying for us. He was a Pueblo guy, had a very good and was very effective at that. And when he passed, his partner took it over, and she did good work for us on the federal level, but not so much in the state. And we just decided we didn't need that at this point. But if that's how you want to proceed, we can put it on with the council's permission as an emergency ordinance so we can get it done so it can be effective on the 1st of March. Otherwise, we'll have to read it twice through.
Can you send us his contract too?
Sure, the draft, you bet.
All right, does everyone feel comfortable moving forward with that? Okay, Counselor Winters, a no. Counselor Maestri?
I would like to just see, it's still
Your mic.
RFP to go out for next year.
Yeah, for next year.
Sure.
Yeah.
But for these months, I think it's important that we have. Mayor, in the contract, did it state how often he was able to meet with us? I mean, is he in Pueblo right now, or is it gonna be
Oh, he
Zoom or?
operates mostly out of Denver, but he'll make himself available as often as we want to meet with him.
Okay, if we could have
And
him on our next.
however often we want him to report to us, we can set up a regular call with him once a week to talk about issues that are of concern. Obviously, we have to be careful if more than two counselors are present on the call, because that becomes a public meeting, and we'd have to avoid that to some extent. But
Well, I think that's why we utilize what we have with Action 22 as far as just advising us of the legislation, of what's out there too. That does help, because they can make it here more often, and they're just letting us know.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. That's the staff direction.
I'll send the contract out tomorrow for your review, and we'll put an emergency ordinance on for your next meeting.
Great. And then in the meantime, I will invite our friends from Action 22 to the retreat. And if they can't do that, a work session.
Thank you.
All right, then, other questions for Ms. Solano? Ms. Solano?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to confirm the directions for staff for work sessions. And next Tuesday evening is not a televised night, but the Colorado Municipal League, Kevin Bomber will be here and prepared to answer the questions that you might have had for the retreat. And then Councilor Maestri asked for both Crossroads Turning Point to be on the same evening as Celebrate Recovery, and both of those are scheduled next Tuesday evening. Madam Chair asked for the Levy Art Mural Contest, and that presentation is scheduled next Tuesday evening. And then I believe Councilor Maestri also requested a return for a Q&A for the Southern Colorado Harm Reduction, and that's scheduled also next week. So it's non-televised, but I think we got everyone scheduled next week then in the timeline.
I'll zoom in, because we cannot reschedule Recovery and Rise because they're utilizing airline tickets to come here. So,
Thank you, and I did forget.
yeah, maybe we can do the Harm Reduction Center to the next week.
We can postpone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, other questions for Ms. Solano? Seeing none, we're going to move right on to our agenda for the Carbon Safe Project. So can I have Ms. Ross and Mr. Brown to the podium, please? And thank you for your patience. Yeah, they press the button.
Thank you so much. I'm John Brown, and this is Ashley Ross, and we're with Carbon America. We're a Colorado-based company that helps industrial sources of CO2 capture that carbon and bury it deep underground. We have a project that we want to discuss today about the potential to do a project with the Department of Energy in your community that would have multiple benefits to local industry as well as to local air quality. As you are well aware, the state of Colorado has set some aggressive, right, for decarbonization. These will have a heavy impact on local industry here. And we wanted to bring to your attention, there's some potential solutions that we think are beneficial to this community. Included in the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in 2022, it included $369 billion for climate change projects. That also included carbon capture, and there's a tax credit that allows for 85 a metric ton of a tax credit that can be used to help create investment into communities like Pueblo to help industrial emission sources put new technology on, and we'll go into that process. We also have applied for funding from the Department of Energy, which we'll go into deeper later, to do a proof of concept project in the Pueblo community. Just a little bit about us. Like I said, we were founded in 2019 with the recognition that there were a lot of industries that were being challenged either by their investors or by regulation to tackle their CO2 emissions, and we had an opportunity to help those companies because it is very complicated technology, and it's all, in the way that we do it, we help design, capture, transport, and store captured carbon about a mile underground using geology to do that, and we mimic what happens for millions of years, and we'll get into that. And then we own and operate the facility, so we take the risk out for our clients. We take the full responsibility of what we're doing because we are the experts. So a little bit about what carbon capture and sequestration is. It really is a tried and true technology that's been used for over 50 years in oil and gas recovery, but we do it in a much different way. There is over 5,000 miles of CO2 pipeline in the U.S. The processes that we will use are highly regulated by the EPA, some of their most stringent requirements, and there's other federal, state, and local permitting. We've identified some well-known geology in the area that we think is very suitable for the project that we're considering, and we'll get more into that in a little bit. So just a little bit about what carbon capture is. There's two types that you might have heard of. There's what's called direct air capture, where a technology where they put large, like kind of filter technology that tries to capture CO2 in the air. We specialize in what's called point source capture, which is we bolt on technology to the industrial process and we capture it before it's released into the atmosphere. We then pressurize it into a gas-like form so that it can be transported via underground pipeline to a geologic storage well. We use an injection system that will pump the CO2 about at least 4,000 feet underground, and we use a lot of science to find the right geology that will be what we're looking for underground is very porous sandstone that allows the CO2 to depressurize and then also start to create chemical compounds with the geology, and it traps it underground. We also use a lot of a higher grade casing and cement to contain the CO2 so it doesn't leak on the way down. It only goes down to the storage complex that we've chosen. And we have there's a lot of EPA regulations that make sure we protect groundwater. And now I'll pass it over to Ashley to talk about the project here in Pueblo.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've been dedicated to this space for 20 years. I have been working for 20 years to get these carbon capture and sequestration projects out into the world to decarbonize our industrial facilities. And I am giddy to be excited to be talking to you today, because what we're sitting on here in this region is such an incredible opportunity. In my 20 years screening hundreds of CCS projects, we've got all of the makings of a great CCS project right here. We've got great sources of CO2 who are really taking decarbonization seriously. We've got a really reasonable transportation scenario where we won't have to we'll take that CO2 as short a distance as possible so we can minimize our pipeline distances. And we have some really phenomenal geology here. There's a formation in the Illinois and Indiana region that is known for being really good for CO2 sequestration. What we have here might be even better. So we're really trying to take advantage of that opportunity to build a great CCS project. So I got excited about the opportunity here, but then as I got to understand more about the Pueblo community and the industrial heritage here and the workforce here, it really kind of opened my eyes to a much bigger vision. You know, Pueblo, home of heroes. Can we be the home of climate heroes as well? So we think about this, we've called this Project EOS, which is Goddess of the Dawn, because we're trying to demonstrate a new era in kind of the energy transition and energy futures. So what we're trying to do here with our CCS project, and this is representative of the rest of our projects, including a project in Northwest Colorado we're doing, and a project up in Nebraska that we've announced. We are keeping these projects local. Some other developers are doing thousands of miles of infrastructure. We want to keep our projects local and demonstrate the benefits here locally. But we also want to do that by bringing some global attention to what we have here. We've got such an incredible community and an ability to lean into those hard conversations about the energy future. We want to create it, kind of catalyze those conversations here and really demonstrate Pueblo as a leader in the energy transition. Does Pueblo want to become a showcase of the energy future? I really do think it's possible. And as we think about it, and as I think about, some people talk about carbon capture hubs. I don't like the phrase hubs. It means different things to different people, and it's not about the people. I want to create here a community decarbonization solution where we can decarbonize the existing industry, but what we're doing is decarbonizing the workforce and providing some climate protection to those jobs. And where we've got the capability, as we think we do down here in Pueblo, to grow this operation, take advantage of that amazing geology, use that as an investment opportunity for the community. There are a lot of companies we talk to that are building new technologies for the energy transition, whether that's biomass to hydrogen or sustainable aviation fuel. Many of these companies are looking to plug into existing CCS ecosystems. So if we establish that ecosystem here, we can create this investment opportunity for additional investments in the community. And as a result of this incredible opportunity here, we've applied to the Department of Energy Carbon Safe program. This is a program designed to fund getting sequestration sites up and running and permitted. So it doesn't pay for the capture, but it does pay for de-risking the sequestration, where what we have to demonstrate to the EPA is the size and the shape and kind of the contents of the reservoir we intend to put the CO2 into, where it looks sort of like those sandstone coasters, not big caverns. It's actually kind of very microscopic pores where that CO2 is going into. So we have to go collect all of the data on all of those pores and all of the data on the seals to ensure that that CO2 is going to stay where we put it. So this takes a tremendous amount of data collection and analysis to put this together. We also have to confirm that there are no leakage pathways, whether that's natural pathways through existing faults or fractures or existing well bores. We'll go out and make sure that we've addressed any existing leakage pathways, and a tremendous amount of work to protect the drinking water. As John said, the regulations around these rules are quite extensive. A permit for a single injection well is probably on the order of 1,000 pages and predicts where every molecule of that CO2 is going to be 100 years from now. So there's detailed analysis. And that's what the Carbon Safe program is meant to do, is meant to provide some funding to get through all of that data collection. And so we've recently applied in November to the Department of Energy Carbon Safe program. We applied for phase 3, which provides funding then for collecting the data and then getting it put into the permits that can be submitted to the EPA. That will then trigger approximately a 2-year permitting timeline. So these are long duration projects. So we are engaging you at the very earliest stage. So we are hoping to be notified in March if we're awarded this funding. But we are committed to pursuing this project independent of Carbon Safe funding. This is a fantastic project. We'd love to bring the Carbon Safe banner and attention to the activity, but this is something that we're interested in doing anyway. This isn't contingent on funding for us. And to put together this proposal, we put together a really compelling team with the Colorado School of Mines as sort of the incumbent de facto CCS academic experts in the state, and the Los Alamos National Laboratory, who do a tremendous amount of work for DOE already on carbon capture and sequestration. So we put together a really strong team there. The 2 main objectives of our Carbon Safe proposal, as we've written here, we want to identify, characterize, and get into commercial operations what we anticipate being a very low cost or kind of most cost-effective decarbonization solution for quite a few of the sources in this region. So we anticipate doing that by collecting all of that data and getting it permitted. But as you'll see on the right, we really want to lean heavy into the stakeholder engagement. I worked on community engagement best practice guidelines for CCS over a decade ago, and I'm really excited to put all of that into practice here and really lean into kind of some of the principles where before we finalize any kind of development planning, doing that deep engagement with the community, with affected landowners before we finalize any of those plans. And so we anticipate working really closely with the community of Pueblo and the surrounding communities, and we've built quite a bit of political support for this project as well. In terms of the current project status, if we think about kind of the three main components of carbon capture and sequestration as capture, transport, and storage. On the capture side, we're in discussions with many of these CO2 sources. Carbon America, in addition to end-to-end project development that John referred to, we are also developing a capture technology. It is still in development, but our capture technology is specifically designed not just to take care of the CO2, but also to take care of the criteria air pollutants, the hazardous air pollutants, SOx, NOx, mercury, particulates. Our capture technology should remove all of that as well. And we're also hoping and planning to pilot that capture technology down here in the Pueblo area for future deployment and at full scale. We're also currently looking at the ability to use Department of Energy funding to bring some direct air capture funding to the area as well. In terms of transportation, we've done some initial pre-feasibility, looking at many, many different potential ways to connect the CO2 sources to where we intend to sequester that CO2. We are looking at probably 25 to 60 miles. We need to get northeast to get to the good geology, to get away from some of the risks of faulting as you get closer into the mountains, and to ensure we're getting into areas where we can protect that drinking water sufficiently. So that's what's kind of drawing us to a particular area. And as John said, we think this looks like amazing geology. It really, really does look like it could be the best in the country. And so the Carbon Safe funding would then provide the funding to go out and collect that seismic data. It's sort of like an ultrasound or a sonogram of the Earth to help us understand the shape of all of those layers, make sure there aren't any faults or fractures that could be leakage pathways, and then drilling 2 test wells so we can go collect all of those samples of the rock we intend to store the CO2 in, and samples of the rock that will hold the CO2 in place so that we can get all of that analysis underway to commence the permitting timelines. So it is very early in this project. As I said, we are at the very earliest stages before we've gone out to collect hard data ourselves. But we wanted to come share the project opportunity with you, especially in anticipation of hopefully receiving some Department of Energy funding to really show the rest of the world what the Pueblo community here can do. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that information, Ms. Ross and Mr. Brown. What questions are there for Carbon Safe? Councilor Flores.
When you indicated that you wanted this project to be local, how are you defining local? Are you talking about Pueblo County? Are you talking about southern Colorado? How are you defining that?
Think Pueblo and surrounding counties, at maximum extent, more of southern Colorado. And that's how we think of local compared to some other CCS developers that are doing thousands of miles of infrastructure and transferring a lot of CO2 across state boundaries.
And when you talk about our soils, I guess, that I'm assuming that you're talking about shale. You're
Actually,
not talking about shale.
Shale actually represents a very good seal to contain the CO2. If you've got any of those sandstone coasters, that's kind of what we're looking for to inject CO2 into. Shale is more like really thick, impermeable, kind of messy stuff that does not hold CO2 very well, but prevents a very good seal against that CO2.
Have you identified any customers?
Yes, we have. We're in commercial discussions with a number of counterparties.
Right.
I'll also indicate that we have our intended land tenant kind of at the intended sequestration site here as well.
Is the amount of money that's available through the federal government, is the project totally dependent on federal money for this to go forward?
No, it is not dependent on federal money. Federal money gives us an ability to expand the project bigger and to do kind of a deeper level of analysis than we might be able to do otherwise. Additionally, it brings that kind of banner of Carbon Safe and the banner of attention, to really bring attention to what we can do. And in particular, kind of leaning into the community elements here. This is something that, we're taking much more deeply to heart than some other CCS developers as well.
My last question is this, and that is, what is the science about putting CO2 into the ground like this? Are you talking I mean, is there evidence, okay, that it's not going to harm us going forward? And, well, you know what I'm asking.
Councilman, that is exactly why I got into carbon capture and sequestration and why I started doing my own research on this. Because as an environmentalist growing up, I thought injecting CO2 into the ground seemed like a bit of a weird, scary idea. So I actually got into this as a skeptic. My graduate research proposals were around studying the molecular interaction of this CO2 in the rock down there. So yes, actually, there's over 50 years of evidence of injecting CO2 into the subsurface for oil and gas purposes. So we've got a tremendous amount of data on what that CO2, on how to inject that CO2 and manage all of those operations. Additionally, as I said, we're injecting CO2 for oil and gas operations. Much of the CO2 that's being injected right now is actually natural CO2 that is being pumped out of the ground, put through pipelines, and then pumped back in for oil and gas operations. So there are existing CO2 storage sites that have held CO2 for millions of years already, and it's a bit unfortunate that at the moment we're kind of pumping natural CO2 out of the ground. So what many people are trying to do is actually replace that natural CO2 with man-made CO2. So there's evidence of the CO2 operations from oil and gas, as well as evidence of the CO2 kind of stability and how it interacts in the rock over millennia. Good questions.
Other questions for Carbon Safe? Councilor Tencio?
In your timeline?
So we anticipate hopefully being notified of Carbon Safe awarding in March. The funding would then kick in this fall. It's about a 3-year performance period for the Carbon Safe program itself. So that would be the duration of the Department of Energy funding. If we kind of take a step back, though, and think about kind of bigger picture project operations, it's going to take a number of years to get this project up and running. And so we are probably looking at the 2027 to 2030 time range, and that will be largely dependent on two things. One is EPA permitting timelines. For example, the first CO2 injection wells in the United States took 54 months to get permitted. So they will be dictated by EPA permitting timelines, which is why we want to get started on data collection now to get that timeline started, as well as the timing for the construction of the capture systems. So as we go out to the emitters who are going to be installing the carbon capture on their facilities, those construction timelines will play into the timeline as well.
Other?
Yeah,
Councilor Tencio?
and what do we do as a city to facilitate your project or to help out or what?
We would love to have you engaged. Clearly, community engagement and stakeholder engagement, and especially community benefits, are a big part of not just the Carbon Safe program, but how we as Carbon America want to develop our projects. So we want to be seen as a community partner with you as we progress on this project. So at the moment, we're here to inform you of what's going on, and we want to open the door to the dialogue and the conversation as the project progresses.
Great. So if you can let us know about when you get funding in March, when it's going to happen, that'd be great. Mayor?
Yeah, just a question, are the emitters, eventually, they pay for the carbon to be stored? Is that how this is going to be sustainable?
So the funding stream for carbon capture and sequestration is a tax credit that goes to the person that owns the carbon capture equipment. So in terms of how the commercial structure is worked out, that's rather kind of counterparty dependent. And we as Carbon America, because we want to do what it takes to make CCS projects happen, we've got quite a bit of flexibility in our business model, so it might look different for the different counterparties.
Would this require them to have maybe less pollution control equipment than otherwise, or?
Actually, so in general, when carbon capture is applied to any industrial facility, most capture systems will require a fair bit of cleanup of that system before the carbon capture itself. So any application of carbon capture technology, independent of what kind of technology it is, should result in considerable improvements to air quality. And actually, the Clean Air Task Force has recently done some really detailed work, including modeling of plants kind of before and after carbon capture is applied to demonstrate the improvements on air quality. And we're currently in discussions with them to, think about how we think about that down here in the Pueblo area.
Thank you.
And this is very much in line with our city goal of becoming net zero by 2035, I believe. So I think it's very much aligned.
And although I may be speaking a bit ahead, but in reality, long-term, my vision for the Pueblo area, if this is what resonates, right? This is only mine, so this needs to be, this is only my idea, but what we could create here is not just decarbonize the existing industry, but attract new industry to decarbonize. My big picture, dream, can Pueblo become the CCS kind of central hub for the United States, right? Can Pueblo build training facilities to come get people trained up for CCS systems that can then be deployed, more broadly across the United States? Many capture systems are going to need to build factories, so can we create this kind of low carbon and CCS ecosystem here to attract additional and kind of continue to bring more and more investment to the community?
Yeah, sounds great. Good plan. Well, seeing no other questions or comments, thank you so much, Ms. Ross and Mr. Brown, and we look forward to receiving your notification of funding in March.
Thank you very much.
Moving along on our agenda then, can we hear from the Colorado Department of Human Services? So can I have, please, Ms. Joseph and Mr. May to the podium? And thank you for your patience. So if you want to press the button, it'll turn red. There you go.
There we go. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having us tonight. My name is Leora Joseph, and with me is Deputy Director Perry May, and we are here from the Colorado Department of Human Services. As many of you probably know, the Department of Human Services is part of the executive of the governor's, one of the governor's cabinets, and it's run, our executive director is Michelle Barnes, and it has 5,000 employees. And we see our motto as the people who care for people. That really is what we do. The reason we're happy to be here today is to talk a little bit about our newest branch, our newest office in the Colorado Department of Human Services, the Office of Civil and Forensic Mental Health, OCFMH. I'm the director of that office. We were formerly part of the larger behavioral health administration in Colorado, and now that's created two different divisions. And OCFMH, we have a number of different responsibilities, but one that ties centrally to the work we do is that the Pueblo Mental Health Hospital reports up through OCFMH. And so we're really focused on caring for those people suffering from mental illness who need a little bit more support. Some of them are civilly committed. Many of them are people who are involved in the justice system. And we are working hard with our colleagues and our medical providers over at CIMHIP, as you all know the acronym for it, and we to make sure that we're able to provide care in the best way possible. We have a new CEO over at CIMHIP. Her name is Jill Marshall. She's been there for a few years. And we are working hard on being able to comply. We're currently under a consent decree in order to be able to facilitate care for those people who are currently in jail and provide them services. We're working hard to do that with CIMHIP and the people there. We are aware that CIMHIP has had many struggles over the years, and we're here because we want to be good partners with all of you. We are currently facing a serious workforce shortage problem. This is reflected across the country when we talk about medical workers, but in CIMHIP, we are down about 40% of our nursing staff alone. and we're very worried about this. And we're here because we want to hear from you and partner with you in any ways to increase workforce. And Deputy Director May is here to talk a little bit about some of the things that we are doing for the workforce to make you all aware. But we are very open to other ideas, apprenticeship programs. We're very interested in talking with you about that if there are other ideas about ways to encourage, because we see SIMHIP, when we are fully staffed, it's an 1,800-person organization here based in Pueblo. And that's a lot of employees. And what we are excited about is that before the staffing shortage, we have people who bring in their brother-in-law, their sister-in-law, the grandmother, and they're all working together. And it's really an amazing thing to see what kind of community support for the hospital there is and how much we can be part of the important workforce. But I'll let Deputy Director May talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Director Joseph. Hi, my name is Perry May. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at the Colorado Department of Human Services, and thank you so much for inviting us down to speak with you. As Director Joseph shared, we are very interested in partnering with you in any way that we can. We are facing a huge workforce shortage that has caused us to have to close some units because we are so short-staffed. But we're excited about what we have coming towards us. Currently, there is a decision item before the legislature for all state employees that will get them much closer to the market salaries that we are competing with. But that is a 2-year plan. That the first phase of that won't start until July of this year, and then the second phase will start in the following year. So we are hopeful that that will impact our ability to recruit folks and provide livable wages for folks here in Pueblo. But in the interim, while we are short-staffed, we are doing everything we can with the resources that we have in order to try and recruit folks to come work. We are offering sign-on incentives for folks to come work at the hospital. We have several times this year offered retention bonuses for the folks to try and keep those folks working with us. And so we're excited about where that's going, but really do look forward to trying to partner with you all to get those other units open so that we can recruit and have livable wages for those folks and be able to provide this important service that is here in the Pueblo community.
Great. Well, thank you for that update, Ms. Joseph and Mr. May. What questions or I guess comments are there from council?
I'm very tied into the traveling nurse program that serves the mental hospital. And when you talk about offering a sustainable wage to local people, but yet you have traveling nurses that are coming in that are making $5,000 a week. I mean, how do you, where's the struggle there? If you're able to pay the traveling nurses, but yet you say you're having struggles paying a sustainable wage, explain that to me.
Yeah, it's a great question and something that is, in an emergency, the pandemic created for us an emergency where we had significant staffing shortages. And in that emergency, we had to figure out a way to keep the hospital open. And there were a lot of federal dollars that came to us through ARPA that allowed us to do things like paying wages to temporary staff, right? Agency staff or contract staff. The difficulty is, in order for state employees to receive a raise, that has to go through the legislature. We can't, unfortunately, just decide based on the money that we have right now to raise wages without the legislature first approving that. So your question is a very good one because it concerns us as well. And the fact that we have had to use so much contract nursing has also driven some of the decision to be able to dedicate a significant amount of resources through the legislature to raise all state employee salaries, and with special attention to our nursing staff so that they are getting paid at a livable wage so that we can reduce our dependence on those contract nursing folks. So it really, your question really is just about the timing of how this all has played out. And we're excited about being able to have this very important legislation before the Assembly this year.
And I noticed that a lot of local people who've worked there and the traveling nurses, they complain about the working conditions from, supervisors and so forth, and that there is a pretty big, nobody's happy working there. So what are you doing to improve that?
Yeah, there's been a lot, the pandemic exacerbated a lot of things. I think first, it caused, because that's such a large operation, there are so many people, right? 1,500 to 1,800 people there. People really got tired of wearing masks and getting tested, and there certainly was the vaccination issue that caused folks to decide about whether they wanted to stay in this field or not. And so as a result, we became more and more short-staffed and started bringing in contract nurses to try and help with all of that. And when you're short-staffed, that's causing people to have to work lots of overtime, pick up additional shifts and so forth, and that really exacerbated a lot of the issues at the hospital in terms of people feeling happy about working there. We're hopeful that the new wages that are getting put into place, they're already having, the incentives that we're providing is already having an impact, except in this nursing area. And so the other thing I want to say is that with our new CEO, Joe Marshall, who has a lot of experience running hospitals, there have been a lot of changes that have taken place over the past couple of years in terms of moving the hospital to best practices in terms of the clinical care. And those changes have not always been exactly what people want. And so we have also, on top of the pandemic and on top of needing to make these changes to make the Pueblo hospital state-of-the-art, there's been some grumblings about a lot of those changes and so forth. So there are a lot of efforts underway to improve to do training with leadership and help them understand how to be a good leader. But the changes in and of themselves have also been very taxing on folks on top of the pandemic, on top of masks, on top of testing, on top of vaccines. So it's been a really, really difficult few years, but we are extremely aware of all of those issues and are working very hard to make significant improvements there.
Okay, so I'm glad you're here because I have this question that always goes through my head is I see we have people that are homeless on the streets and so forth, and they're suffering from, serious mental illness. I want you to talk to me about your release program. When you go to release patients from the hospital, do you have a program that they go to where if they came from a different part of the state or the United States, that they go back home, or they're put into a halfway home where they're mentored instead of just out on the street? Because we seem to have a lot of that.
Yes, we have an extremely robust transitional program in terms of ensuring that the folks that are coming out of the hospital have somewhere to go. We do not, it actually is, we do not release people just to the streets. We have to ensure, because that population also is a forensic population, right? So these are folks who are struggling with mental health but have also been involved in the criminal justice system. So it is extremely necessary for us to be sure that when they leave the hospital, they have somewhere to go, they have somebody monitoring them in, depending on their mental health issues and criminal sort of charges and so forth, to make sure they get somewhere. In fact, I would say one of the difficulties is that there are not enough resources in the state at this point for folks to transition into the community. So we, unfortunately, have some people who don't need to be in the hospital that we are working hard to try and find a place for them to go, and have actually passed legislation over the past 3 years to build group homes that those folks could go to improve the guardianship kinds of issues that they struggle with in order to get them into a nursing home or what have you. So in fact, this is so necessary that we make sure we're not discharging them to homelessness, that we have people in the hospital waiting for us to find those resources.
And just so that the public understands, everyone there is court-ordered or sentenced to be there, is that correct? Nobody just goes there just to put themselves in for care, is that correct? Everyone is court-ordered or sentenced to be there?
That's correct. Everybody at the Colorado Mental Health Hospital, we have changed the name, Colorado, not Mental Health Institute, it's the Colorado Mental Health Hospital in Pueblo, is there because there is criminal justice involvement.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I know that did you have a question?
Well, just a couple of things. You know, my mom did her student nursing there, and, you know, that's when they were seeing lots of patients there. She spent 20 years as the head nurse on West Central Division there. And I think it's important that we recognize that until a few years ago, we had civil commitment beds there at the Mental Health Institute. We have no civil commitment beds at the Mental Health Institute. As they've indicated, all of the patients there are criminally insane or waiting to be adjudicated. So they're all there on the forensics unit. There are no civil beds there. And that's why it's created such a problem in this community, is because these people that are clearly mentally ill walking around the streets, they can't get put back into the hospital where they can get put back on their medications and get their psychosis under control. So they commit a crime and they end up getting their mental health treatment in jail. So one of the things I think you should look at is a couple of weeks ago, we just cut the ribbon on PCC's Medical Training Center. If you haven't been over there, you ought to go, because I think there probably is a way to get some student nurses out of that kind of program. They're bringing people from all over southern Colorado, and it's a state-of-the-art facility. They're going to train a lot of nurses there, and hopefully that can be a pipeline there. But I think, you know, those student nurses, those internships, those kind of things are all ways that you can get them there. But obviously, the pay's got to be up there as well. And it's tough, because these are tough people to work with. You know, it's not very humane to just have them out on the streets without providing treatment to them. And unfortunately, I think that's what's happening in a lot of cases here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we are in agreement and very sensitive to this need for more civil beds. And ultimately, I think the path forward to have robust mental health treatment in Colorado is by building up our civil system. But the reality today is that we're under a consent decree where the state is being sued right now $12 million a year because of our inability to provide treatment to the 440 people waiting in jail. So this is an absolute violation of their civil rights to be in jail and be mentally ill and not have access to treatment. And so we've had to make these very difficult decisions about nursing, and you've alluded to some of them, about how we do this balance. How do we keep this hospital open? How do we really form priorities? And these are the things that the department is struggling with every day. And it's hopefully we're going to be on the other end of COVID. You know, I do want to comment that across the country right now, we're facing these medical workforce shortage because of how damaging and difficult it was to be a medical provider during COVID. And I think that has caused this problem that we're in now. And we're trying to get ahead of it, but we're behind, and we're owning that right now. We do have a number of strategies that we're employing to really try and fix things, but it's going to be slow because there's a lot of sick people. And because we were so behind during COVID, we really did have to shut down our operations for so long to not be able to admit patients, and then therefore the people in jail took longer to heal and be able to go back to court and participate in their cases. And so that's kind of the wheel we're in now.
Counselor Wenner?
Thanks for coming tonight. You know, the state demographer has been predicting this employee shortage for years. So it's not just COVID. This has been going on forever. And I don't think we're expecting an increase in that workforce until 2040. So it might be really educational for us to hear from the state demographer's office to come. They might be able to do a presentation even via Zoom so that we can all actually understand this. Is that possible?
If
Laura? Yeah, thanks.
We'll get it scheduled.
I would just add the state demographer would love to come present. She loves coming out and presenting.
Is that me? Yeah. If I could just add one thing, though, that's an interesting point that we've learned in our work. There is no, we also run the hospital at Fort Logan, which has more civil beds there, but we just opened a forensic unit and we hope to open eventually. And what's an interesting thing from our perspective is that we're experiencing the same workforce shortage in that Denver metro region as we are here. So this isn't about Pueblo, this at all. This is why we want it. We have hope that we are going to be able to partner with, and that we're going to be able to grow the workforce here in Pueblo and have good partnerships and create exciting opportunities for people. We're facing the exact same staffing issue in our Fort Logan hospital.
Counselor Atencio?
Yeah, I think one of the problems is that you're recruiting your professional personnel from the same pool that everybody else is trying to recruit. And that pool is dwindling and getting smaller all the time. And I think it would be incumbent, and just a statement, incumbent upon organizations like yours to start apprenticeship programs, like in the same vein that the mayor was talking about, apprenticeship programs and training programs to get people into the business. Maybe they won't, some of them will become nurses or professional people afterwards. But the problem is that the middle income people are those professionals and educated people, and no one is recruiting from the lower income, and that's where the pool is. The unemployment rate for people at the very bottom of the economic ladder is twice that of the unemployment rate that we're given every day. I think the unemployment rate here in Pueblo is 5 point something. I venture to guess the unemployment rate for people on the Lower East Side is 8 or 9%, probably 10. Nobody's looking at that group, and they're capable. Anybody can be trained to do if they're given the proper training. The problem is that nobody recruits from that, and that's where the pool is. That's where the talent is going to be. That's where the numbers are, and nobody ever goes down there to recruit. So just a comment, you want personnel, you want a talent pool, there's a good place to go get it.
Thank you so much for that suggestion, and it's something that we're actively investigating as ways to, the state just created a new apprenticeship office exactly because of what you're speaking about. This need for us to make sure that everybody is given opportunities in the workforce, no matter what their level of education is, that we can really use people at all places. People have amazing capabilities and may not be college appropriate or whatnot, but it doesn't mean they can't be workforce appropriate, and we have to encourage that. And so a lot of our efforts now are looking and seeing which are those places and how do we partner. And if there are specific places here in Pueblo that you'd like us to really focus on in terms of an apprenticeship program that could work with the hospital, we would be very, very open to those discussions.
Great. Counselor Flores?
The city, we started a new program within the city of creating a monthly dashboard. And that dashboard immediately has produced some amazing numbers. The first number is that there are approximately 4,200 people that are unemployed in the city of Pueblo. And there are 4,500 positions that are available in Pueblo. That always blows people away. The problem, and what has evolved as a result of our dashboard, is that we're training people for the wrong jobs. And I think that's one reason that the mayor identified what PCC is doing, is that they've decided to just, expand the training of nurses. We also have a portion in our dashboard that the highest occupation, obviously, is nurses. And just in the city of Pueblo, we need 250 nurses. And we're just a small portion of the population in Colorado. But it is the workforce development problem that has to be tackled. And we have the people, we just need, you had mentioned that if we have any ideas. In the old days, when I was in high school, I remember a lot of my friends going into what was called the psychiatric technician program here at the Colorado State Hospital. And a lot of them used that. It was a 9-month program. They utilized that, and then it became their jobs at the Colorado State Hospital, and that's how they got elevated to higher positions and as they developed their professional credentials. Is there such a thing anymore?
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because we are currently looking at opportunities, because one of the gaps that has been we've become aware of recently is that we have folks who are going through these high school kinds of programs who are 16, 17, maybe 18, and just need to have a place to go work in order to finish the program. So we are currently looking at, there's a Colorado Vulnerabilities Act that we have to operate under, which has some regulations in it about how old somebody has to be in order to work in certain environments and so forth. So we are currently exploring ways, specifically here at Pueblo, to help those folks finish their hours so that they can then become certified and come work for us. But we're working out the ages that they can do that at, whether they can be 16, whether they can be 18. So we are actively, we're trying to turn over all the stones here to find ways to get the workforce.
A training program at the Colorado State Hospital right now of any kind?
So we partner with Pueblo Community College, I know, for CNAs, and they were coming through that. A lot of that got paused during the pandemic because all of these kinds of programs got paused due to transmission rates and so forth. So that program is getting started back up. We also have, and I'm not sure whether it's actually going now or not, but Joe Marshall is working on that. And then we also have nursing clinical rotations, so folks who are in nursing school can come through and do their rotation. And then we also have that fellowships for psychiatrists that can come through. So we do have those rotations available. We don't, so they can come work at the hospital and get their, clinical rotations done through us.
It sounds like you have money to train people, and I would advise you to talk to Patty or Javik at PCC to see what other ideas she might have, because she's totally focused on workforce development right now. And there's a lot of people in the community that are, it's this dashboard that created kind of everybody's opening their eyes now to the fact that we've got this anomaly. Just as one example, Arapahoe Community College has done away with 23 specialties. That's community college, because none of those specialties were going to have a job at the end of their certification. That's what you're going to start seeing now. And, it's something that we all need to work at. And I definitely understand your problem.
And in the interest of time, I know that we're already running late. Is it okay if we ask one more question and then move on? Do you have another question, Councilor Mike Street?
In that position, it's a very dangerous position for the nursing staff and the hospital staff, the medical staff. Is there anything that has come down through state legislation, like the police have lost qualified immunity? Is there anything where, when it's a combative situation, the medical personnel can become liable for any type of injuries and trying to defend yourself. Yeah.
I think you're highlighting a reality that these patients are very, very vulnerable, and they're very ill, and they need a lot of care. And it's one of the issues we have in attracting nurses anyway, because this is just a very important population that needs a lot of services. Our patient and staff safety is our number one priority. And one of the requests, Deputy Executive Director May referred to our request to increase salaries for our medical personnel. But our other big request was to add our quality assurance team so that we have people constantly monitoring every day, checking. For example, these are patients that need 15-minute rotational checks every day. We now have people checking to make sure that the people are checking on the 15-minute checks. It's, this is the kind of thing that is extremely important. We're also very focused on making sure that the hospital is physically safe. And so we talk about mitigation. Are the door handles on the rooms safe, or are they dangerous potentially for ligature? And so those are the kinds of things where we're constantly evaluating every day. So make sure that our patients and our staff are being, kept extremely safe. We do have a Department of Public Safety presence there as well. And there's the immunity there, that's not a bill I'm aware of.
So I guess what I'm asking you, is there any liability for a medical worker that's being presented with a combative situation, that they could be liable if the patient gets injured and them trying to defend themselves? That's all I'm asking you. I'm sorry.
So we have very, very specific training for all of our staff in terms of what they need to do in those situations, which includes calling public safety, calling Pueblo has its own, the hospital has its own little police department and security officers. And so there's lots of training for the direct care staff in terms of what they should do in those situations. There's lots of, there's a very robust communication system that exists in the hospital that will call out a code, if you will, and then you have staff responding. So there are a lot of efforts, there are a lot of things in place to prevent people from having to be in a situation where they would have to be fighting with a patient. They have lots of training to do that appropriately. Is there protection for a staff person who operates outside of that and does something to a patient that isn't, part of what's trained and so forth? Certainly there are issues there, but the staff are very well trained to handle those situations.
Okay, we got to move on. Ms. Solano, would you mind connecting them via email to Dr. Erjavec or the director of the student nursing program at PCC, especially since they've opened their new campus? But thank you so much for joining us and coming all the way down from Denver. All right, moving right along, Crazy Faith Ministry, Mr. Lonnie. Thanks for being patient, Lonnie.
I have a slide, there you go. Okay, City Council asked me to do an update on the warming center, so that's what I'm here to do. So, before I show a little 30-second video that I have, I want to just show you that video because it shows you the impact that we put into this community and how much we love this community, and we don't want to stop working in this community to bring people out of homelessness. But we have two main points. This Crazy Faith does not exist to bring more homeless people into Pueblo, to enable those that are currently homeless at this time or stay homeless. for this video will also see, you could see a lot of teaching. We do a lot of budgeting, help them show how to budget, help them to stay sober and clean, and help them to change their lives around. So I am not for sure how to do this. Can you go to the next video or the next slide? If you want to play that video. So that's just a little slide that I wanted to show you of what we do through the ministry. And so this is not just keeping people warm, but we actually feed them on a Sunday morning, and it's all for the public. Oops. I don't think I started that. So could you go to the next slide after that? Maybe. So you came here to find out how the ministry was going. So we've been able to help 968 men and 343 women from a grand total of 1,311 people so far. Typically, we are over capacity on the men's side. Our goal next year is to have a building for men and only, and get another building for women. So we are over capacity. Right now, our current location is 2,500 square feet. Our men's emergency side has been, I think when I was here the last time, I said I could house about 29 people in there. We've been up to 36 people a night. So that's a lot of people sleeping in one area. In the women side, we could house about the same amount, but obviously there's less women on the street than there is guys. So we've had up to 19 women staying there in our current location. So if you could hit the next slide, please. My wife dispatches about a dozen calls a night when it's cold out from Parkview or St. Mary Corn or the police department, or even other people calling us and saying that they have found somebody laying next to Loaf and Jug or on a sidewalk, and they came and picked them up and brought them down to the warming center. It is not just a warm place to stay warm, but we actually talk to them and get to know them. Our accomplishments is to keep them warm and keep them, give them something to eat, have less strain on PD and Pueblo Sheriff's Department, and the keeping them out of the ER and the hospitals. And it's been going good so far. Just during this outreach warming center, we've helped 15 people get off the street since starting in November till the beginning of February. That's how many people that we've helped off the streets and into a place of their own, into treatment, into assisted living, some into motels just temporary, some we purchase tickets to get them back home to loved ones. So if we could go to the last slide. This is one of the guys that we helped get off the street. It was back in December. His name is Kenny. He actually He's 61. He's a Pueblo native. He's been living on the streets for 15 years. He's a alcoholic, and right now he is 75 days sober. He's in treatment. He's doing really well right now. And that's one of the success stories that we've had out of many. Since we've been doing this ministry, we've had over 400 people we've helped get off the street. So, and a lot of people that we talked to, if you go to the last slide. I just want to thank you guys for supporting this ministry, actually just supporting this warming center, because it's something that Pueblo needs. And since, like I said, since we've been doing this ministry, in the last 5.5 years, we've gotten over 400 people off the streets doing this ministry, out of homelessness into good, either secure jobs or places to live. And one of the guys that came with me, he's one of them that has been off the streets for a couple of years now. So that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Lonnie. And thanks for all you do. What questions are there from council? Councilor Graham.
Thanks, Lonnie. Do you open every night that the mayor declares the warming shelter? Or how do you decide, and what does that look like for everybody?
Anything above 20, we don't. Let's just face it, a lot of the people that we take care of or help out, a lot of them decide that they want to be outside. They don't want to have a place or a place to live. I have seen some of the people that I never thought I'd see there, that I know, but any time it's above 20, we don't open up.
One more question. Did Crazy Faith participate in the point in time count? And what did that look like for you guys?
We gave all our numbers to Kathy Klein, and then she put them down, but we did not have anybody come into the shelter or into the warming center. So we did not, I guess, if you want to hear that. Yeah.
Councilor Maestri?
You know what I like about you, Lonnie, as I navigate through this process and why I've always supported Crazy Faith, is that you take care of people before you and Tammy worry about a salary for yourselves. In fact, you've invested so much of your own personal money in saving people. And what I've learned about the difference between ministry, street ministry, and nonprofit is that you take care of the people and you use the funds to take care of the people before you take care of yourselves. I want to thank you for doing that for our community. It took me a while to understand that, working with you, working with Circle Recovery, working with the assemblies, and all those that are trying to do street ministry and come up with tithing funds and funds from businesses and private individual funds, and taking care of people before you take care of yourselves. God bless you.
Thank you.
And thank you for all you do. Are you going to be homeless here pretty soon yourself?
I
as
hope
far as
not.
as far as a building?
Oh, homeless, yeah, not personally, but homeless for church, or for the warming center, yes. Yes,
Yes.
because she put it up for sale. That's another reason I wanted to bring to your attention that we would love to do this next year, but if we don't have a building, then we can't do it.
What are you finding out there on the streets for a building? What are the costs?
We have not really found a whole lot, not to do what we'd like to do, because we don't want to just do what we're doing. We want to educate the people that are getting off the street so they'd be able to go back to the workforce. So put a little more time and effort into them and get them back in. When they come out of treatment, house them for a little bit, train them a certain trade, and then get them back into the workforce so they can support themselves instead of all of us supporting them.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen about the ministries. That's what they're doing. They're trying to do a full circle. Get them clean, get them educated on life skills, get them jobs, and get them, sustainable homes to live, be sustainable so that they can acquire their own place to live. And I, like I said, I've been working with a lot of you and just learning and educating myself, and I just, thank, God bless you for all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
How much would one of those buildings that you're looking at cost?
Oh, about $500,000.
About $500,000? Maybe, and they have been probably one of the most sustainable and helpful resources when it comes to a warming shelter. They have invested directly 100% right back into those needing shelter. Maybe we should think about that type of investment because, we've invested over there in the Mission, I guess, by buying a lot that doesn't really have enough space to accommodate anyone. And maybe we should entertain a proposal, an ARPA proposal from Crazy Faith Ministries on obtaining a building. Is that something that council's willing to consider?
I would.
We're always looking for solutions, right? And they've been very successful in their warming shelter. We've seen them reinvest.
They're very honest.
They're very honest, and we can look at a proposal.
Yeah, I think a proposal would be fine, Lonnie, if you want to put together a proposal.
For a building?
Yeah. We can work on that.
The building that you're at is, I'm so sad that it's for sale because it's like the perfect location for you guys. So it was such bad news when we found out that it was for sale.
What's she asking?
No, I have no idea. Do you know what she's asking?
It's
for?
really not big enough, though.
Yeah.
It's too small.
It's 350, but it's actually, with the amount of men that are out there on the street,
Yeah.
if we had that just for a second location, we could literally house every man that was on the street. We've only turned away 3 people, I think, since we've been doing this since November.
Yeah. Because we keep repeating this cycle every year when it becomes cold. We live in cold weather.
Lonnie, how are you doing for ARPA money? Do you think you're going to have enough funds before the end of, winter?
We are actually on this week we'll put it at day 37 of this week. So out of the 40 days, there's about 4 left.
Wow. Okay. That's something to keep in mind then for us too. All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you so much, Lonnie, for coming in to talk to us.
Thank you, Lonnie. Put that proposal together. We'd like to see it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Last one, Ms. Pins. And she's going to talk to us about the Fire Station 11 and the new county jail project and what fiber looks like.
Hi and good evening. I just wanted to talk briefly tonight about a joint city-county project related to the new Fire Station 11 and the new jail. The mayor has authorized regular ARPA funding from the city's portion for this project, and we'll be bringing a resolution forward in the next few weeks for your consideration. So this evening, I just wanted to go through what this project looks like. And up on the screen, you'll see a fiber path and the breakout of the funding related to the project between the city and county. And I've talked with the county IT director, who has gotten tentative approval through the county manager to fund the other portion of the project. So we're in this together right now and have agreement to go ahead and move forward. But what you'll see up on the screen is the areas that are in yellow and the numbers next to it that say 288 is existing fiber paths. So we'll be taking 288 strands of fiber down the yellow path to Fire Station 5 from the old EOC, which is just down on Grand. We'll be splitting that fiber 50-50, where the city will own the conduit from the EOC to the jail, and we'll be splitting the fiber and the costs 50-50 there. You'll see where it turns red coming from Fire Station 5 to the new jail, which is going to be a brand-new path and new conduit. In that conduit, we plan on putting in 3 1 3/4 inch conduits so that we can keep county and city governmental services into a separate conduit. And then as broadband companies expand and may need some assistance in conduit in that area, we'll be able to possibly lease or share that conduit for them in order to expand broadband to the home as those different development areas build out. you'll see coming down the blue from the new jail to Thatcher Avenue, that's going to be county-owned conduit with the city-owned fiber inside, still split 50/50, but that will be a new path. That will be a secondary path for network services for both city and county. Then we jump back into the yellow coming down Thatcher, which will come all the way down to the Municipal Justice Center, where we'll split off the city's portion and continue the 144 strands back to the EOC so that the jail has a redundant route for network connectivity since it's so important. When you look at the cost on the table to the right, you'll see that, as I stated, everything is split 50/50 from the old EOC to Fire Station 11. From the Station 11 to the new jail, Pueblo County will pick up the full amount of those costs since that's kind of extending their services up to the jail. The redundant route will be split 50/50, and the city will be picking up the railroad permit that's going to be required to bore underneath West 24th Street. So when you look at how that kind of tallies out there, you'll see that the city's portion of this project is about $597,275, while the county's cost will be about $684,975 for a total cost of the project of $1,282,250. So like I stated, we'll be bringing a resolution for your consideration forward, but that's kind of what this project does and how we're going to be able to get those services out to both of the new areas for both city and county.
Great, thanks, Ms. Pins. What questions are there from council? You said it was it was regular ARPA money, and why not the lost revenue ARPA?
The mayor has asked it to be in regular ARPA under the broadband portion of regular ARPA.
Okay.
And not out of lost revenue, because it does satisfy that criteria in the guidelines.
Yeah, just curious. What would be the timeline on it?
Well, if you guys approve it and we get the project funded, I will immediately submit the railroad permit, because it'll probably take about 8 months to get going. And then we'll probably look to start 3 to 4 months after that permit comes through. So it'll probably be in the middle of the construction of the new jail, because we'll have to probably get that to there first, but I'm not sure when Fire Station 11 is set to kick off for construction. But I believe we'd probably start within a year period of time once it's funded.
And is the county IT manager doing the same thing with the county commissioners right now to get it approved?
He did not state that.
Okay.
So I am not sure when they're going to do that at this point in time, but because the main task that we need to get going is the railroad permit, I think that's a little bit lagging on the county side for him to move forward, but he did give his commitment to me that they're going to approve it. How they're funding it, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. Seeing no other questions or comments then?
I'm sorry, Ms. Lori, how much was that you were requesting for the ARPA funds?
From the city side only, it was $597,275.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Pins. So that concludes our work session at 7:16. We're going to have a brief, it's about 10-minute recess before the regular meeting. We had some technical difficulties at the beginning of the work session, so they're going to be changing some things out to try and minimize and prevent future technical difficulties. So I thank you for your patience. But right now, I conclude the work session.
Thank you.